All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Global Renaissance Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Barrett. I got a special guest with me, Chris Eggy. How you doing, man?
I'm solid, man. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, Chris, we know each other. You went to Harvard. What year did you graduate?
2018.
2018. I was like a freshman. That's really crazy. But former basketball player, founder, creator of the Waiv app. We're definitely going to talk about everything that you got going on. But first, I want you to introduce yourself. Who are you? Where are you from?
Yeah, so, from Toronto, Canada area, Markham. It's a suburb just outside Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up there. Both my parents, Nigerian immigrants. So, education was a real big thing growing up.
Yep.
Grew up to be 6'8", so basketball, became something pretty big too. So played, a lot growing up. Played AAU, ended up playing for Canadian junior national team.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what brought me to Harvard. Played at Harvard also in high school. Played at a school called Montverde down in Florida. So got to play with some really good players throughout my high school career. Like Andrew Wiggins, Simmons, Andrew Russell. So if I was going to go to the league, ended up at Harvard. Ended up working in finance. Goldman Sachs for 3 years doing tech investing in like early stage startups, and then decided to kind of go out on my own. Was all set to start the JD MBA program here at Harvard, and then found out I had the opportunity to start going to this accelerator program. So now I'm working on Waiv.
That's dope, man. And we're gonna get to kind of your current exploits, but I want to run through kind of your upbringing, because I don't think that, for anybody who watches basketball, they know some of those names. I know what Montverde is. They know Andrew Wiggins. They know Ben Simmons. So can you talk about when you were first introduced to the sport and kind of how it went from, like, because I know for most people who play basketball, it's a casual thing, but to get to the level you got to, you really had to dedicate yourself. So kind of what was your introduction to the sport, and when did it become something where you were really dedicating yourself to it?
Yeah, so I always really liked basketball. I had like a little Typesnet in my basement. Me and my brother used to just like play one-on-one on that all the time. Play a lot of 2K, NBA Live growing up. When I really started to take it seriously was around 7th, 8th grade. Probably 8th grade is when I started taking it really seriously. I played for my school team, but I also signed up for like a rec team outside of school. And I was trash. I was tall for my age. I was like 6'4", 6'5", around that age. But didn't play much. Came off the bench. Could barely run and chew gum at the same time. And then just fell in love with the game and decided I wanted to put more time into it. Started training with coaches. Started going to as many practices as I could. And just invested myself in the game and said this is something I want to take seriously. Ended up being on the kind of regional, state team, provincial team the next year. And that's when things kind of took off for me. I got to be on the Canadian junior team. Started, getting ranked in my class nationally, which was cool. And I always remember a conversation I was with one of my coaches. This was 8th grade. And I was just talking with all my teammates, and they're like, "Oh, Chris, like you could play college ball, et cetera, et cetera." I was like, "Nah, man, like I'm good, but those guys are like really good." My coach, he said, "Don't ever say that. Like you could do it." And so that always stuck with me, and that was kind of like a big turning point for me, where I went from thinking I wasn't good enough to thinking, oh wow, like I could take this pretty far.
Yeah, that's dope. And so after that point, where was that transition? So you're growing up in Toronto. At some point, you end up in Florida, right? When did that happen? How did that happen? And what was that transition like?
Yeah, so I would say like my sophomore year of high school. By my sophomore year, I was like the number one player in my class in Canada. So I was playing on the national team, starting to play AAU with a CIA bounce, which is where I met Wiggins and some of the other big Canadian names at the time. And I was thinking about how I could take my career as far as possible. And at that time, a lot of Canadian players were going to schools in the States to get exposure, to play against better competition and the like. And so that summer I was thinking about going to school in the States. Ended up not. And then my junior year came after that season. I decided, if I really want to take this where I want to take it, I need to be playing against the best competition every game. And so met the Montverde coaches, really loved what they were doing, and decided to take my talents to south of the border. LeBron James style. Now it was a great school, good basketball program. Coach Boyle was like number one coach in the country several years running, so I just thought it was a really good opportunity to expand my game.
And was there like a, I guess, cultural transition from being in Toronto versus being down in Florida?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. I mean, Montverde's a boarding school, so that was one thing that was just very different, and like I think kind of dampened the effect of like moving from Toronto to Florida, because I was on campus was really international. There's like students from all different countries. in the dorm, even just on our basketball team. A guy from the UK, had a guy from Chad, guy from Senegal. So it was like very international flavor, which I think dampened some of the change. But it was very different. Like it was just like I was in a little bit of a different world, and it took a while to get adjusted. But by the end of the year, I was kind of used to it. Really enjoyed the experience. Really loved my teammates. We got to travel a ton, play on TV a ton. So it was different though, for sure.
Can you talk about what it's like at a young age? You said you were ranked number 1 by like what, sophomore year?
Yeah.
So can you talk about what that's like to be that young, you're 15, 16, to have that level of attention where you're the best at something? What did that do for you as a person and your confidence and your belief in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it was both a good thing and a bad thing. Definitely gave me a lot of confidence in my game, just seeing, other people recognize that. I stood out amongst other people, in my country. And so that was positive, and gave me kind of a balance to how I played. Gave me a balance to how I kind of went about my business, and gave me a lot of confidence, particularly growing up, like being tall, awkward, gap teeth, all that stuff. So like all the time I put into this game of basketball, starting to see that come back to me in recognition. That definitely helped. And then on the other side of things, it's definitely you have to balance the fact that I'm 15, I haven't done anything yet.
Yeah.
And so how do you manage that without getting ahead of yourself and thinking that you're something you're not yet, and stay humble, still put in the work, still push yourself. And so I think it was interesting because to a point I wouldn't say my ego got super big, but I definitely got a bigger ego, thought more of myself than I probably should have. And it's easy to kind of sit on your laurels and rest on your laurels at that point. But again, I'm 15 years old. I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that balance of, one is a good thing to have in the back pocket, and, it's good to be recognized. But on the other hand, you got to keep pushing and, kind of the next battle.
Can you talk about, one of the things I appreciate about athletes, especially high-level athletes like yourself, you guys set like kind of a standard where we get to see what it looks like to perform at a high level, right? Most people watch some form of athletics. Well, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people do. But not everybody kind of knows the type of work you have to do. Can you talk about, being 15, 16, 17, being in high school, being a kid, and putting in the type of hours? What was that like? What was your work regiment like in terms of working on your game, working on your craft?
Yeah, so I would, get up, do like, like a core kind of body weight workout, typically like push-ups, sit-ups, then go to school, try and get to school a little bit early. I either just shoot by myself or like play, 3-on-3 or something with my friends. You have classes. If you have like a break in the day, try and get to the gym, shoot some shots. And then, after classes ended, I typically, have practice with my team, and then I had a trainer I would work with. So I'll leave school, drive, go see my coach Coach Vlad, who's my trainer at the time, and then we work out for like an hour and a half, and go home, do my homework, rinse, wash, repeat.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the schedule. It was it was a lot, but I honestly just really loved it. Like I loved every bit of it, and like getting better and just playing well.
So now you're in high school. You're doing your senior year at Montverde. When it's time to choose colleges, what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, recruiting was interesting because again, like for a lot of my career, I didn't think that I would ever be good enough to like play D1 basketball. So it was very new to me, to my family, all these coaches, how to think about it, what schools to think about. Because, growing up in a Nigerian household, it was like Harvard or bust, honestly. It was kind of how I thought about school for most of my life. And then at this point, I'm starting to think about, there's other schools from a basketball perspective that might make more sense for me. And so the recruiting process for me was thinking about where I wanted to go to school. Is like I have to balance, I really do want to get the best out of academics. I also really love this game of basketball, and I want to see how far I can take it. And so it's trying to figure out which school was the right match with the two. And so for a lot of my recruiting process, funny enough, I didn't think Harvard was that school. I definitely, appreciated Harvard for what it was academically. But, basketball-wise, I thought another school might be a better fit. And then, it wasn't towards the end of the recruiting process. There's one point at which I almost committed to to Cal Berkeley, actually. I remember I spoke to my coach at Montverde. I'm like, I think I made my decision. He's like, oh, what would you decide? I'm like, I think I'm going to Cal. So you should take your visits first. And so I went on my Harvard visit shortly after, met Coach Amaker, and just sat with him, talked about, basketball, talked with him about life, with him about what was happening at Harvard in terms of the program he was building. Got to meet all the guys on the team, feel the vibe, got to see the institution, went there with my family, got to see like kind of what it meant to my family. And, by the end of the weekend, I was sold. And so made the decision to go to Harvard. And so it was an interesting process, though, like navigating, a lot of different schools calling, navigating what's best for you, and then also navigating, all the expectations that others have for you. And so, I'm glad, looking back, that I made the decision I did. But it was, a challenging, enlightening experience.
Okay. So now you get to Harvard, you're 18, I assume. What then was that transition like? So you've already done a transition, which I think is probably unique. Most college students haven't gone very far to go to high school.
Right.
You've already gone to a boarding school, so you've already kind of had that transition. So going from high school to college, what was that transition like for you? Academically, socially, athletically, what was that like?
Yeah, it was new. It was, it was interesting to your point, right? Like I had just gone through a transition, spent like all my life, going to school in Canada, and like randomly my senior year, I'm like in a new school, have to like find my bearings, all that. And then next year I'm at Harvard, and I arrive at Harvard, honestly, like not just hoping I could get by, right? I thought basketball would work out, and then like school wise, if I could get like B pluses, A minuses, I'll be very happy. And then I remember I kind of had this one test in my math class. I turned it in. I got like the highest grade in the class. I was like, oh shoot, like I'm actually smart for Harvard.
Yeah.
It's like I can actually do well here too. And so that kind of changed my perception of how I was going to engage with the experience. And so, I had like a little goal board that I used to keep in my room freshman year where I was like, put up the goals I wanted for each semester. And, so I originally said I wanted like a 3.5 GPA. And then, after that test, wiped it. And it's like, okay, let's try for a 3.9. And so it was, that was like that whole coming into my own and, imposter syndrome. Everybody deals with it. And like realizing that I actually did belong here. And like I could compete academically was really an enlightening process. Then basketball wise, it was a big adjustment. Going from, being highly ranked in high school, playing out Montverde, playing a national championship game, feeling very confident about my game. And at Harvard, we had a ton of seniors. And it's like, okay, like I played a little bit, but not that much. And, I was like really scrawny, wasn't really ready. And so it was like a hard experience, where basketball was my identity in so many ways, having to realize that I was a person beyond that. And so that was challenging, but also like really enriching because I got to explore a lot of different parts of myself, got to engage in a lot of different things. And, whether that was, 2014 was like a year of a lot of unrest, right?
Yeah.
Michael Brown was killed right before I got to school.
Yeah.
Eric Garner was killed right before I got to school. There's a lot of protests in school, participating in those, seeing how I could get involved there. And that's led to a lot of the stuff I've done since graduating, helping Emerald Garner, who I work a lot with now. We're currently working on planning, a fundraiser. She does like an annual fundraiser in honor of her father, Eric. And it's like, that's something that I wasn't really thinking about in high school. Yeah. That, like coming to Harvard, that's something that, it was something I thought a lot about in high school, but didn't really think about how I could be involved and act on. And so coming to Harvard kind of broadened my horizons and like the way I could think about the world, or even like starting a business, all these different things that, I was really focused on basketball, kind of escaping that single-mindedness and opening my mind to all the different opportunities I had in front of me.
Do you think there was a perception among the non-athletic student body about athletes at school? Did you feel that? Do you feel like that's not really real? Like, what was your perception on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a little bit, right? There's this one story I always tell. I was like doing really well in econ. I think it was freshman year this happened, and everybody was like in the library working the PSET in like their own groups or whatever. And there's this one question that everybody was stuck on, and I just got. And so one student was asking someone else for help, and the person was like, "Yeah, I actually don't know the answer." I was like, "I know it." He's like, nah, man, I'm good. I was like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was like, I feel like there's perception that, you didn't get here on academic. You're not as smart as we are.
Yeah.
And so that was something, I kind of took personally and just kind of like grinded through.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, definitely there was a bit of that. But it's, you also reap the benefits of being an athlete.
Yeah.
Like being in that community
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of students come to campus and you have to find a community. I came and I had like 20 brothers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's kind of the pluses and minuses.
What did you concentrate in?
I studied econ and I did secondary in AFAN.
Got you. Across your 4 years there, what's the one thing you learned about yourself that maybe sticks out the most?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing I learned about myself was how I responded to failure.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of my life, it was like, okay, I want to be the number one player in country, and like just grind, and I got it. I wanted this, grind, and I got it, et cetera, et cetera. And I got to Harvard, and there's certain things I just like, I grind and I didn't get.
Yeah.
Because there's so many other talented people there. Whereas I was on the basketball court, didn't get as much playing time as I wanted. Academically, wanted to be a Rhodes Scholar. That didn't happen for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was one thing I learned about myself. Just like, sometimes when you grind, no matter how hard you grind, you're just gonna miss the boat.
Yeah.
And you just gotta be, you gotta grind regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta be, happy with the process. I think that was something I really learned in school. Is like, I feel like a lot of students at Harvard, you're so used to results,
mm-hmm.
and your work ethic being associated with, accolades or validation. And then I think at Harvard, a lot of times it was, still being in the gym and that validation not coming.
Mm-hmm.
Still working in the classroom and sometimes that validation not coming. And then doing it regardless, because the process is, the process of learning, the process of, being in love with the game, that in itself is a reward.
Yeah.
And like looking inward more than looking outward
mm-hmm.
for what other people thought. I think those are some things I learned.
Yeah, that's important. Like enjoying the process, because at the end of the day, the result is it's a momentary thing. Like
right.
whether it be like, okay, for example, as an athlete, you always want to win the championship, right? That's probably a memory that's going to last. But at the end of the day, that win happens in a quick split sentence.
Right.
But that season, the multiple season it takes to get there, the camaraderie you build with your teammates, that's what really lasts for a long period of time. So whatever it is you're doing, I think enjoying the process is super important. So going from, okay, college, you've been hooping for years and years and years and years. That's a thing you do. Your senior year, you're thinking about, okay, what am I doing next? What was that decision-making process, right? Because you decided you didn't want to go pro. You probably could have, maybe the league, maybe you would have gone overseas. But, once you hit the D1 level, you could go pro. So you could have gone pro. What was the decision-making process like then where you're like, I want to pivot and go in another direction?
Yeah, so, my senior year, I had a concussion. And I missed a lot of the season. And so season ended. And, I have, the offer at Goldman, make more money than, I've seen, really.
Mm-hmm.
Or I could, try and go to like a second and third tier type league and like work my way up in the professional system,
mm-hmm.
see how that goes overseas. So those are kind of the options I was evaluating, was talking to, a few people I knew as agents to see, whether that was something that made sense for me. But at that point, honestly, I was just, I felt I got out of the game what I needed to get out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt there's also like just an element of, I want just the game to be fun still.
Yeah.
And I feel like, going pro would lose some of that because
mm-hmm.
now, it's your livelihood. And so I was like, coming out of school, I was just like excited for the opportunity to just like play basketball and like not have to worry about like, what's going to happen in the next game.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like, I was just playing for fun. And so decided to, leave basketball to kind of a more recreational thing and then do the thing at Goldman. And that's kind of how I thought through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the concussion obviously played a role in it. Whereas, if I felt like I was fully healthy, I probably would have given it a go for like a year at least.
Yeah.
But just with that, with the health issues and with just where I was mentally,
mm-hmm.
I thought it made more sense to just take the next step.
Mm-hmm. So can you first of all, what did you do at Goldman? What was your role? And then what are maybe some of the things that you learned in that space?
Yeah, my role was, so I was an investment analyst. So we basically, we like put money into businesses, bought parts of businesses that were growing pretty quickly, like $20 million checks to like $100 million checks into these businesses. So yeah, we invest in different companies. Um, like there's one music app called Splice. We did an investment in that. A company called Hopper for like booking travel.
Yep,
Did
heard
an
of it.
investment in
Yep.
that. So yeah, so my role was like to research companies, try and find ones that might be interesting for us to invest in. Talk to their team, see if it was a fit. If it was, then we like, I do research on the business, see if it, how it was doing, do some financial modeling, get into the numbers, see if the numbers made sense, and then present it to our team internally and see if they were, if they agreed. And so that's kind of the role for 3 years, was just, really meeting these people with great ideas and then evaluating how well they were executing on that.
So you were on kind of an interesting end of, I guess, funding startups or funding companies, where most people who get into, the startup lane probably haven't been on that side, but you were on the side of the people with a buddy writing the checks, helping these businesses get off the ground or get into a different stratosphere.
Right.
What did you take from that? Now, well, I guess I'll couch that question. Talk about Waiv, how you got there, what it is, and what you want to do with it.
Yeah, so Waiv, how I got there. So I'd always been interested in starting something, from when I was a kid. Like I started my first business in 2nd grade. I sold glue sticks to my friends and their parents. And so it was called The Business. And like the slogan was like, we sell antiques for the cheap. It was like some dumb like kid stuff. But yeah, that's when I first started, and so I was always interested in entrepreneurship. And then so I got to Goldman and meeting all these people, hearing all their ideas. I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. So while at Goldman, they have like this pitch competition. I participated in that. That went really well, actually. I made it to the finals, ended up not, winning. But out of that, myself and a few friends from work, we like really hit it off, and we're like, oh, we work really well together. And so, I'm pitching different ideas, and so we had this one idea for kind of like a social network type app. Sorry. And after thinking through that for a little bit, I'm getting ready for school at this point. So I applied to Harvard, the 2+2 program, pre-graduation for business schools. So, my clock is coming up. So I'm getting ready to go to HBS. Also applied to law school. Was fortunate enough to get into law school. So I'm getting ready for this 4-year, school journey. And, we applied to something called the South Park Commons Founder Fellowship. It's like $400K to help you basically get an idea off the ground. And like your idea doesn't have to be perfectly set. Like you can work and explore different ideas. And so saw a thread on Twitter, said like, yo, like guys, let's shoot for this. And so I submitted an application like December and got rejected. Then they had another round, and so we applied again, put a little bit more time in, and then we got into the program. And this is right before school, so I was like, okay, I either go to school or I could do this program. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. And one thing that's kind of important, I guess, I lost my father my first year out of school. And he was like, someone I always really looked up to, very entrepreneurial. And I remember at one point, I was, thinking, I was kind of like idolizing this one, this one entrepreneur. And my dad's like, you don't want to work for him, you want to be him. So that kind of heard that in my head, and I was like, okay, let me take the leap and like see how this goes. So we all took the leap. We all quit our jobs kind of within the same week, and we started working on this startup, not quite knowing where we were going with it. So we iterated on different ideas, and then, as we kind of had more and more conversations, we arrived at Waiv, which was like, college is hard, man.
Yeah.
Especially like financially, it can be hard. And so we were like, how can we help students financially? And it's like, okay, where do students spend their money for the most part? It's like all these local businesses around them. So we're like, how can we partner with these local businesses to make campus life more affordable for students? And so that's kind of at the center of Waiv. And then we're like, how can we leverage that to help students start thinking about their finances in a more holistic way? Help students start building credit. 40% of students in the U.S. either don't know their credit score or don't even know they have one. How can we use that to help them start saving more? How can we use that to help them start their investing journey? But just like all this stuff you might not be thinking about yet. Let's make college cheaper for you, and at the same time help you start thinking about that stuff. So that's what Waiv is, and that's kind of how we all got to the point where we are with it. And so right now we kind of have this waitlist rewards program going on campus where, you can sign up, get, cash back for making purchases at the small businesses around campus. And then we're gearing up to hopefully launch like the full app. And then you'll get people will also have access to a card if they want it that can help them build credit in the next month or so. So really exciting. It's a lot of work. It's been a grind, but yeah, that's kind of how we got to it.
All right, cool. So that's, first of all, an amazing idea. I think you got to two really important points. One, that college is hard, especially financially. Working full time while you're in school is difficult. Some people do it, some people can't.
Right.
And then on top of that, thinking about all those things like you mentioned, starting about credit, right, investing, all of these different things are a lot of times students aren't informed about those things. They don't have the means to actually get informed. Right. So the fact that you're even doing that is amazing. What I wonder is, what are some of the lessons that you got either from being a high level athlete or your 3 years at Goldman that have now helped you in this process of starting up your own company?
Yeah, I think it's something I was reflecting on yesterday. I think the biggest one is, sometimes it's better to get the answer. Most of the time it's better to get the answer right than to be right.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be stubborn. Coach tells you, you got to set the screen. You're like, nah, you know what? Like, the shot's going up next time I catch it. Or you can do what coach tells you, because sometimes it's better, this is what's going to help your team win versus, this is what you want to do. Or at Goldman, you might think this is the right decision to make, but the team, comes to a decision. And sometimes, like, the right thing, is not what you think it is. And so really being willing to change your mind when someone tells you they disagree with you, I think has been really important with this. Because at the end of the day, when you're making a product that like other people need to use, like no matter what you project onto them and say, like students need this or people need this, they have to actually want it. And so you have to be willing to like, okay, I was wrong. What do you actually want? And constantly iterate through that. So I'd say that's a big thing. I think the other one is process, kind of in the same vein. Just be willing to, the results are going to be here or there. Rome wasn't built in a day. Some days you're going to see, oh, wow, that worked. Some things that you're going to do and spend like hours on, it's just not going to work at all. And what you just got to do is keep revisiting your process. And as long as that's tight, the end results will, hopefully be more right than wrong. And, just put in the work in. I think it's the biggest thing I learned from basketball. The best players, some are just naturally gifted. Most is the hours in the gym that no one else is seeing.
Yeah. And
so, it's easy, CEO of this company, or I'm doing that, and like post on Instagram and, go to parties, buy bottles. And, like, you definitely should have fun, but it's also like great things are made by, the hours you put in the trenches, right? And so being willing to, sacrifice a little bit to earn a lot. Point I always used to tell my teammates when I was, a senior, was my freshman year after we won, like, the Ivy championship. That was, like, one of the best semesters of my life.
Yeah.
And, like, we had to grind, and, like, there's, like, some practices that you hated, But, like, going to March Madness, all that fun stuff, like, you get it from the work you have to deposit in the account before you can withdraw.
Exactly.
And so same thing with this. I have to put my bid in, put my time in, do all the work I need to do up front, where it's less sexy, where nobody knows what Waiv is, etc. And then hopefully it works out. And then also just being okay with the chance it doesn't.
Yeah.
Which I think is the new thing. Versus like, Goldman or a lot of the stuff I've done in the past where it's like, Harvard's set in stone. Like, that's a great school. No matter what, no one's going to question the decision you made.
Yeah.
Goldman, great company. No matter what, no one's going to question the decision you made. Waiv, like, if it don't work, people are going to be like, why did Chris do that? And so, taking that risk, being willing to bet on yourself, It's a bit new, but it's also something, when I left home and went to a school in Florida, that was betting on myself in its own way. So all these different experiences kind of build up to hopefully this Waiv thing working. But if it doesn't, again, I think it's a learning experience, and again, being obsessed with the process versus the results.
Yeah. So there are two things I want you to kind of pull the curtain back on. One, that decision, you kind of spoke about it where you're like, okay, I could go to school, I could do this Waiv thing. Like, that's a tough decision to make. So I want you to kind of talk about that a little bit more in depth, because I'm sure there are plenty of people who are kind of at a juncture where they got to decide something. What did that process look like in terms of weighing the pros and cons of each, and then ultimately figuring out, like, I want to take this leap of faith, like you said? Going to school is nobody's really going to question that. You're going to business school, you're going to law school, you're going to top schools, and like nobody's going to question that. You jumping out and saying, I want to build this thing myself. If it doesn't, go according to plan or how you might want it to, people are going to question it. What was that process like personally and emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I think the big thing was I always knew if I didn't do it, I would always question what would have happened if I did.
Yeah.
And that was like similar thing with Montverde. I could have went to Montverde. I could have just finished in Canada and still probably went to play D1, etc. And it's taking this risk of going from being the guy on my high school team to Ben and D'Angelo were the guys at Montverde, and have to figure out if I'm even going to get playing time or start, and have to just earn it all over again. That's a challenge, right? And I think I've put in the time. I believe in myself a lot, and if I believe who I say, who I think I am, who I think I am, then it's time to let's see, and it's I could go to school, and obviously school is a great path, and a lot of people that's the right decision for them. But for me, it was I just had to see, I just had to know if these ideas in my head had any merit, if I was the guy to who should be doing this. If this entrepreneurship thing that has been scratching at me since the business in second grade was the path for me, I just had to know, and so that was kind of my decision. In terms of how it felt very scary. I remember waking up the first day. I remember my last day at Goldman. I was super happy. I was like, I'm free. Remember the first day, the paycheck didn't hit. Woke up, I was like, damn, this is different. And it's now I'm in a whole new world, and we'll see what happens. And so it's been an interesting path, and the decision was definitely tough, but I think I just went with my heart, and I went with what's the one thing that what's the decision I would regret the most.
Yeah.
Let's make the other one.
Yeah. I feel it. Now, another kind of pull back the curtain, in terms of the grind and the actual work and what goes into trying to get something like this off the ground for anybody who might be trying to do that, what does that actually look like? In terms of you're collaborating with other people, what type of conversations do you have? What do you have to bring to the table on the individual level? What do you have to leave behind for the sake of the team? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it changes every day. One day it might be having to talk to all the restaurant owners in Harvard Square and tell them this is what we're working on, and be like, okay, we're not interested. And then show up the next day and be like, I know you said you weren't interested yesterday, but I just want to make sure you understand what it is. And so thinking about, okay, this is why they said no yesterday, spending the night prepping, thinking about the best way to present it to them, understand what their needs are, finding people to interview so you can just better get inside their mind. So that might be one day. The next day might be, okay, this is a product we want to build. What does it look like? Working with designers, working with team members, talking through features, thinking about how to put all the pieces together to make a product that makes sense. The next day might be, okay, what's the money looking like? So everybody's paychecks are going through. How much, with the money that we got, how much time do we have to keep working on this? When do we need the next check-in? Do we have to, can we hire more people? Can we bring on contractors? Okay, what's the legal situation with all the, the employee contracts? Which vendors do we need to pull this product together? So every day is different challenges, but I think at the core of it, like the way I always say is like, this product needs to exist. How do I make it exist? And then once it exists, people need to use it. How do I get people to use it? And so that's like the North Star through it all. And then it's like every day something different has to come into equation to make that happen.
That's dope. Now, just to wrap up, same question, two different things. What do you want to see from Waiv? Like, if there, I don't know, there might not be kind of like an end result for you in your head, but if there is, what is that? Or what can you see it blossoming into? What is the potential you have for it in your head? And then for yourself, I know this isn't going to be the last thing you do, whether it pops off, whether it doesn't, I know it's not going to be the last thing you do. So what more do you see for yourself coming down the pipe?
Yeah, I would say with Waiv, the big thing is, from money in college can be lonely, man. Like, I remember senior year, I was in a tough spot financially for a bit. You know, I hit up a friend. I was like, yo, can you send me $300? It was like bad. It was like, it's just stressing me out. And at the same time, I'm like trying to figure out college. Like, am I going to play basketball next? Yo, all this other stuff in your life. The last thing you need to be worried about is money. Yeah. And the last thing it's so like taboo to talk about. It's like you're going through it by yourself in a lot of ways, because you don't, like, nobody wants to. You're not gonna tell your homies, it's like, oh yeah, it's tight right now. Yeah. So with Waiv, I wanted people to feel like they're not alone with their money. Like, you know, I want them to feel informed. I want them to feel empowered. I want them to feel like we're all together in this. And so I think if we can create that feeling where, you know, college students at first, and then maybe people more broadly after that, just feel less in the dark about their financial situation, less controlled by and more in control of their money, I think that we've done like what we need to do. In terms of me, I mean, the main thing for me is that I just want to be happy. I want to, you know, feel free. I want to do stuff I love. So for me, it's always going to be, you know, trying to build stuff and put, you know, stuff into the universe and help folks, I think. And like, you know, my mom, you know, managed a home for people with Alzheimer's. So I grew up around that, and I see just like the love she put into it, and like the love that she put into her work. And like, if I can put love into my work, and put love into the people around me, like my mom or like, you know, my late father, I think that's kind of like the goal for me. And so taking on projects, hanging out with people that like, you know, push towards that, I think is kind of what the present is for me, which is great. But also like what the future is.
That's amazing. At the end of the day, like, if you're not happy, what's it all for? Right. I think that's amazing. This has been a fantastic conversation, Chris. Thank you for coming on. This has been extremely insightful for me, and I'm sure anybody who listens to this is going to get a lot of value from it. Where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, ChrisAki24. Follow Waiv, also Waiv Campus on Instagram, Twitter, you know, all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Dope. Appreciate it. The links to all your stuff will be in the description. You can go ahead and follow me on Instagram at _TrevWoods, TikTok and Twitter, same thing. Follow the podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead, leave it a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go ahead and leave a review, hopefully 5 stars. But thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Global Renaissance Podcast, and I'll see you on the next one.